Hi, everyone, and welcome to this session of the Thriving Families Africa Summit. Today, we are holding space for a conversation that sits very close to many hearts, and that is a conversation around loss, waiting, and the resilience that we don't even know we have during those moments, during those really, really hard seasons of motherhood. And our guest, Kambua, needs no introduction. I am so glad that you said yes to this conversation. And think we know Kambua as a music minister, a personality on media, and I think for me, a woman of deep faith who lives out her faith in ways that are very, very authentic. And I honor you for the journey, for the way you share your journey with such honesty. And your story really has just resonated with a lot of women, including myself, having gone through partially through that journey as well. And thank you so much for being here, Kambua, and for allowing us into such a space in your story.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Chakua. It's such an honor to be here and be able to have a conversation with you. I'm really looking forward.
Thank you. So our conversation is around loss, waiting, and the resilience of a mother's heart. Again, the strengths that we didn't know we had, but sometimes we really just have to go through those seasons to be able to find that strength. And for you, Kambua, you've walked this journey through loss, through waiting. Maybe just starting. I know a lot of people have heard your story, so we're just picking up, the lessons out here without minimizing the journey. So
Right.
share
Yeah.
a bit about what that season has taught you about faith and about resilience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My waiting journey, because none of us imagined that we will find ourselves in the waiting room.
Yeah.
So I found myself there unexpectedly. And I think that the things I learned in that season were, number one, my everything that I have always known got tested in my waiting season. It's like you have these truths that you hold on to, the promises of God over your life. I've grown up in the church. I have a relationship with the Lord, but the rubber meets the road when you find yourself in that situation, is when what really gets tested. And it almost felt like I had to throw everything out of the window and begin all over again, and to get to know God all over again, and what his heart for me is, and trusting him, trusting that his plans for me are good, whether or not the situation becomes favorable to me, in the sense that whether I was going to have children, or because there's still no guarantee, if it remained to be a closed door in that way, what does that mean? That did it mean that I no longer believed in God, or what did it mean? And I had to get, it's such a personal journey that, I mean, nobody, even the people who love you so much, cannot be on that journey with you. I had to be on that threshing floor, myself and God, allowing myself to ask whatever question I needed to ask, because you also hear people telling you, don't question God, don't ask God. But I say, he's my father, I have a right to ask him questions, and he says, come, let's reason together. So sometimes I did it in tears, sometimes I was angry, sometimes I was so disappointed, but it was a place where I brought all the questions that I had. Now, did he answer all my questions? No. Even till today, a lot of those questions haven't been answered, but he always gave me a piece to go back with. And I learned that for me, God was my safe place, my safe space, my safe place, because when you're going through something, you want to share it with people, but it's not every person that you share with that is a safe space. Some people just want information. It's out of curiosity. They want to take you to the gossip blogs and all of that. So even as you're sharing, you're so cautious, or you share and you're left thinking, oh my gosh, have I overshared? But then with God, I knew that there was no limit to what I could share with him. It was always safe. And I wouldn't be left feeling, though I always left feeling lifted in some way. So my waiting season really built my relationship with God, really, really, to the place where I was like, God, I really believe you are who you say you are. And I trust you with everything that I have. And even though this is so hard, this is so painful, I know that you will give me the strength to walk this journey. And also getting to the place where I desired to wait, because I came to realize that the posture of our hearts also really matters when we're waiting. So as I've said, I had my seasons of grumbling, anger, etc. But then I got to a place and I was like, God, I don't want to serve you from a heart that's angry and a heart that's disgruntled. I want to serve you from a place of real joy and real peace and real satisfaction. And I know you can give me that. So can you give me that? Because I, if I cannot get that, then I don't want to serve. I don't want to minister. And God is so faithful, because before I realized it, He began to change my heart, and I started to enjoy doing ministry again. Even though the miracle hadn't happened, I was doing it joyfully. I was doing it, I was, that time I had a job on national TV. I was doing all these things. I'm doing the music. A lot of what I do ministry wise is very public, is very frontline. And so you can imagine, when you're having to do those things and you're breaking on the inside, it's very difficult. But somehow God gave me the grace to do it, and I found myself doing it very joyfully. And I think that we all have to get to that place, because if we don't, then the pain of waiting can really break you. And you can easily become a shell of yourself that you do not even recognize, because your livelihood is dependent on whether this thing happens or not. And the reality being that there's no guarantee, no amount of faith could guarantee that what I wanted to happen was going to happen. So I am grateful to God for the grace, and I'm grateful for the lessons that I learned in the waiting room. I don't think I would have learned them if I was not in the waiting room. A lot of those things are so theoretical when you're just hearing about them. Yeah, trust in the Lord with all your heart, wait on the Lord, be of good. It all sounds, we can recite those verses, but when you find yourself in the dark, in the night, in the, the night, midnight of your soul, then those scriptures are really tested. So that's what the waiting season was for me. And then, of course, 7 years into waiting, God opened my womb, and I have a miracle son called Nathaniel. I have miracle children, because God opened my womb 4 times. The first one was a miscarriage, and then Nathaniel, and then I had a son called Malachi, who transitioned and went to be with the Lord really quickly, which was so devastating. You can imagine, so devastating, because you're back to God has done it, what a testimony, blah, blah, blah. And then you lose that so quickly. It really confused me so much. But I feel like I had the backdrop of who I know God already to be, was the backdrop that I fell back on. So I said, it doesn't make sense to me. It hurts me more than anything I have ever experienced. I don't get it, but I trust you. And we can obviously, I know we'll talk more about that, but then God blessed us again with another beautiful girl. Her name is Natalie. So I have 2 sons and I have a daughter. One son is in heaven and the 2 others are in my house.
That's a beautiful story. And I think one of the things that for me stands out is how you held on to God. I know that there are many people who decide, you know what, God's not working for me. Did you ever have those moments where you were like, look, God, it's been real?
I get it.
Yeah.
However, here's the thing. I feel like for me, and I usually say this, that for me, God is the one card I know I always have, that I cannot afford to lose. I mean, like, I will cling on to that card. I would rather die clinging on to that card, whether I lose my mind while clinging on to it or whatever. I have, yes, my
Frozen.
faith has been tested. I apologize. I had a call coming in.
Yeah.
How do you stop calls when you're having Zoom meetings?
I don't know.
So they need to find a way.
I think there is.
I had moments of,
we just
is there?
Just you and I don't know, but I think there is.
We need to figure it out.
Yeah.
So I was saying that yes, I had many moments of doubt, but it wasn't doubting God. It was doubting whether the thing that I wanted would happen.
Okay, yeah.
I have not, like, if I said, God, it's been real, you didn't do it for me, I think I'd be dead. Like, I need God, Dr. Carol. I need him with everything I am. I think the track record that I have, or rather that God has created for me in my life, like when I look back, there's no way I would be here if it was not for God. And I knew that even if, and when I think, if I compare God to my earthly biological father, who I loved so much, I know that there were, my dad would do anything for me. But I also know there were times when he said no to some of my requests. There were times when he wanted to and he wasn't able to fulfill some of my requests. I never for any of those moments said, "You're no longer my dad.
Yeah.
I'm so disappointed. I denounce you as my father."
Mhm.
He remained to be my dad, whether I was angry, disappointed, etc. How much more God, who I know knew everything before time, for me, that has always been more of a place of strength than a place of and I think it's part of it is growing in God, because I remember years ago when I was much younger and I was going through, it wasn't anything too serious, it was a broken relationship. And I went to my pastor and I was like, God has really let me down and he's just so far away. And my pastor, who, I thank God for him, but he told me, Kambua, um, when you're going through a hard time, do you think God is further away from you or closer to you? And I was like, he feels so far. And he asked, so is it God who moved or is it you who moved? And I was like, okay, well, maybe it's me who moved, and I always remember that he never moves, he never changes. If anything, he's closer to us when we're hurting, because he really cares about us. So no, I doubted the situation, but I never doubted who God is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you say that you go to a place where you say, I might get my prayers answered or not, but I will still have faith. I will still serve you. I will still do what I know you have called me to do.
Yeah.
How hard is that? How easy is that? What kind of message would you want to tell people in a position like that, struggling with that
Yeah.
kind of decision of accepting that
Yeah.
it might never work out the way I'm desiring?
Getting to that place was not easy,
Mm.
but that's what surrender is. When we realize and when we acknowledge and realize that there are things that are beyond our control as human beings, that there's absolutely nothing I can have all the money in the world, I can have all the connections, I could have known the best gynas, but there was nothing in my power that could change that situation. First, it's such a humbling reality. And I realized that I could choose to either, as I was saying, break and be bitter for the rest of my life, chasing a dream that to be honest, I have no power over, or I could surrender to the one who is able to make it happen or not. And I chose that path of surrender. I chose, fine, if you are, because you say you're the giver of gifts, if this is a gift that you desire to give to me, and my husband, he was always very convinced that, or rather, he'd always said that God had promised him that he would one day be a father of children. So he's like, this is a promise that God makes, and God never goes back on his promises. But of course, I'm showing him doctor's reports and blah, blah, blah. And it's like every news I got was more negative than the one before.
Yeah.
And, but he kept saying, God said it, God promised. So anyway, I had to get to that place of, okay, I cannot control it, I cannot change it. It doesn't matter how many, if I track my days or I do whatever, there's nothing I can do to change the situation. So I give it up. I give up. In fact, I don't want to think about it. I don't want to obsess about it anymore. I surrender. And I leave it in your hands to do whatever you will do. And I know that that's the best thing I ever did for myself. I remember reading a book of a woman who I had followed her waiting journey. She's an American woman. I had followed her waiting journey, and there were so many parallels with our story. But I remember when I was reading her book, she said that motherhood is a great calling, but motherhood is not the only calling. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, because I realized I had built all my dreams around the idea of being a mother. That if I didn't become this, then what did it mean? That was I not complete, or was I not enough? And I was like, who said that? Who said that Kambua minus children is not complete? Kambua minus children has nothing to bring to the table. Who said that? And I realized those are actually lies from the enemy that I had believed without even realizing. So I had to shed off all those untruths and start replacing them with the truth of God. So what does God say that I am? And so that's, for me, those are going back to the basics. And I realized that I'm actually enough, and he wants to use me as I am. I'm not lacking anything. Children are a blessing from God. They are an addition that God brings, and in his wisdom or his whatever, there are people who don't get to have that blessing naturally, like give birth in God's own, to his discretion. We don't know why. So I had to accept that about God, that you are sovereign and this decision is up to you. You know my desire, but I cannot twist you. I will never be God. So if you choose it or you don't, or to do it or not, I want to trust you. You help me trust you. You give me the grace to walk this journey. You renew my strength. You give me the faith. You hold my head up high. You take away the shame because I am carrying shame over something I cannot control. Because our society, especially African, but the world over, but really African society, motherhood is such a big card, you know. We are measured by certain things. Are you married or not? Do you have children or not? You have one child, you don't have more children, you know. So and so we carry all that shame, and it doesn't belong to us. It's not our shame. It's not there's no reason why we should carry shame over those things. So me getting to a place of surrender was also me saying, God, then you help me walk this path. It's not, it looks very different from what I imagined, but give me the grace to do it. And really he did. He really did. And surrounded me with the right people who prayed for me, who lifted me, which was so important because the noise around me was so much, you know, the questions around were so much. You have your internal questions and then you have external noise. It was a lot. But then I also realized I was not the first woman on earth to ever walk through this journey. You go back to the scripture and you read about Hannah, you read about Rebecca, all these women, Sarah, all these women, they walked through that fiery furnace. And I was like, okay, what was the posture of their heart? What can I learn from these women? Did they denounce their faith, as you are asking? What did they do when they found themselves in that place? And I said, God, may I be found faithful in whatever situation, because waiting is not limited to waiting for children. I got out of that situation, but I can tell you I've been in many other waiting rooms past that time. And they're equally tough, some of which I can't even really talk about, but they're tough. It's a tough place to be. Nobody likes to wait. Even when I go to the bank, I want to be served quickly and go. But sometimes I find a very long queue, you know, and I have to wait. The waiting room is not an exciting place to be. But if we change our perspective and start to see, oh wait, because I strongly believe there's beauty in every single season, everyone. Because as a married woman without children, I can tell you, Dr. Carol, that sometimes I used to decide, I want to go to the United States. Okay, my husband is like, travel well, sawa, I'll see you, sawa. And I am off and I go and have a great time, you know. I cannot just do that now.
Just up and go.
I can't just up and go. I have to think through so many things. My babies, okay, I'll come sing at your church in the US, but I have to be back as soon as I'm done because I have other responsibilities. The seasons have changed. So there was a beauty in that season. But if my eyes were so fixed on the next, just fixed on the next thing that we want and forget to look and see what's good about where I am, it's so easy to miss that beauty and to miss what God wants us to learn in that season. So as painful as it was, looking back, I'm grateful for the things that I learned in that season.
And I know, you know, a lot of the things we say are cliches. They really are truths, you know.
Yeah.
They really are truths, you know, looking back, seeing the beauty of the past, being able to actually be thankful. You know, right, really just looking at, is it the silver lining in the cloud? They all sound cliches, and sometimes we misuse them because, you know, we just throw them around.
Yeah.
We don't really realize the process. But I've really come to learn the value and the wisdom of what those things are, you know, what it is, you know, that we call cliches. So, you know, speaking of community and noise and all that, what would you tell, what should be the posture that we take as the community who are close around this person who's waiting or has really had a series of losses in that space of time?
I'll tell you what I can tell you what I really appreciated, and I can tell you what I did not. So I really appreciated friends who asked me directly and did not ask other friends to find out what's going on.
That's very
so yes, so people who said, Kambua, what's going on? How can I help? Do you want to talk about what's going on? How can I help you? How can I support you? That meant the world to me. Even if I didn't want to talk about it, it meant so much to me. So the reverse, what really hurt me would be, oh, so and so was asking another friend, what's going on with Kambua? Why can't she have children? I literally, like, I've had to go through a process of letting people go, and I'm talking years later, letting go of people because I carried that hurt. I was like, why would you? Because then to me it sounded like, so it's just gossip. Yeah,
it is.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And then what I would also say as a community is just, I think it's the importance of uh, the person knowing that they are safe with you, they're safe around you, and that if they share anything with you, they've shared it in confidence, and maintaining that is so important. If what they need is company to go to the gyna, or company to go for that IVF cycle, whatever it is that they need, and you avail yourself, that means a lot. Yeah, so supporting someone who is in waiting is in different ways. I have also known of situations where women don't even know that there are options as far as their doctors that they can see, because they have the knowledge, they don't have the knowledge. So again, when you ask questions and you ask from a genuine and a place of love, you could actually be the person to help this person that you care about. Maybe they didn't even know that there are fertility specialists out there. They did not know. Nobody has ever told them that. So don't bombard them with information, but if you can carefully find out where they are at, what they're open to hearing, then you know how to support them. I think then when I think also about the weight and some of the things that maybe struck me as insensitive or painful, even though the intention was not to hurt me. For instance, I remember a friend somebody who was very close to me got pregnant, and we were so close that I should have been at least number 4 to know that she was pregnant. But she carried this pregnancy. I ended up finding well into her pregnancy, and I found out very casually from somebody, oh, by the way, did you know your friend is pregnant? And I thought, what in the world? So I remember, thankfully, she was my friend enough for me to have a conversation. But my first instinct was, I was so hurt because why didn't she tell me? And then we spoke, and she said, I found it so hard to tell you because, so she was being sensitive to my situation, but it was so much easier if I had heard it from her than hearing it from other people. So I think it's less of walking on eggshells around that person and being open and honest with them. That is more appreciated. That is more appreciated. So don't hide information. Don't do that kind of thing thinking you're protecting her. It ends up being more hurtful. I think off the top of my head, those are some of the things that I can think about. Don't center yourself in somebody's pain. I like to say this a lot because sometimes we, especially as women, for instance, miscarriages are fairly common. 1 in 4 women go through a miscarriage. So it's a lot of women who've gone through a miscarriage. I think that if, for instance, I have just had a miscarriage, I drew a lot of strength from women who are around me who are like, by the way, Kambua, even I went through a miscarriage. I felt less alone when they did that. But there was also other people who now make it about them in that moment. And oh my God, and just their devastation and on their miscarriage, So it's knowing that between I'm sharing this so that you can feel less alone versus I am sharing this, and by the way, yours is not even so bad. Me, when I went through this, you get the difference. And it's very tempting because it's very tempting for us to do that. We can't compare pain. So if this is even if I have, because I later I went through child loss. If I have a friend who's going through a miscarriage right now, I'm not going to tell her, by the way, it's just a miscarriage, it's not that bad. Me, I went through child loss. It's acknowledging that her pain is actually very deep. There's no greater, lesser pain, etc. This is what she's going through right now. So meet her at that place. She's in the waiting season. Meet her at that place. So just meeting people where they are, I think, is so important.
And I think also just, also accepting help and allowing that help also makes a really, really big difference. There are things that stick with you that people say even without meaning. And I think what for you, without planning to do that, and what you're saying, you went through your own space where you had to release people. So that's part of the journey as well, just learning to release people, because a lot of these things they say, it's really from lack of knowledge. Just speaking to a grief in part of this summit, a grief coach, and she says there's a lot that we need grief literacy,
Yes, I agree.
Grief literacy to be able to provide that support.
Mm-hmm.
There are just some specific spaces. Like for me, I think it's like for your second born, I gave birth
Yeah.
and then I lost the child after about 24 hours. And
Oh,
then
I'm so sorry.
it's okay. It's been like 18 years. It's 18 years. And I think the last few years is when I've really decided, look, this was a loss. Because,
Yes.
immediately after that, I went into trying to get pregnant. I was like,
Yeah.
and I think I may not have been at a space where you are, where it was, you know what, if it happens, it doesn't happen, it's okay. And for me,
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
that point, my identity was just around being a mother. So thankfully,
Yeah.
I conceived after like 5 months down the line.
Yeah.
But I
Mm.
remember it was such a dark season. My pregnancy
Yeah.
with my son was such, I was dark, I was scared, I was so, it was a very,
Mm.
very closed space. And I know that a lot of
Mm.
women sometimes go through that because you can't
Yeah.
imagine going through that, carrying
The
this child
loss.
and then going through the loss
Yeah.
again. And even when I had the child,
Yeah.
I was numb. That joy that
Mm.
you feel, it is just numb. So I don't know if you had a similar experience. I don't know if you've worked with women with similar experiences,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
how can you speak into that space?
It's such a real thing what you're talking about. It's the fear. We've gone through such heavy trauma,
Yeah.
and the fear is valid. I was speaking to some women a couple of weeks ago at a maternity hospital, and I was asking them what they're most anxious about. What are their fears now? They're pregnant. So now that you're pregnant, you're about to have a baby. What are your fears? And some of the women immediately just started breaking down.
Yeah.
And when they started sharing, they were all women who've experienced some loss. There was a stillbirth, there was a miscarriage, so they had stories around that. And the fear was, what if it happens again? What if I've gone through all this for it to end up like the first time? And I was like, I get it at such a deep level
Right.
because I was that woman, where you're excited that you're pregnant again,
Mm.
but at the same time, there's such a fear because loss takes away your innocence about pregnancy. It
Yeah.
just completely strips you off of that innocence where you realize, oh my goodness, are we still there, Dr.
Yep.
Carey?
Yep.
I feel
Yep.
like we froze. Okay. Um, you realize, oh, okay, so there's no guarantee that because I'm pregnant, this will go all the way.
Mm.
Um, so I'll tell you that I part of how I overcame that fear along the journey was number one, I'll have to go back and credit, of course, God being the ultimate, but I'm going to credit my husband for being a voice that was very close to me that constantly spoke
Mm.
life to me and to my situation.
Mm.
And he constantly said, you cannot live in fear, you cannot be in fear, it's not gonna be the same. So I had a voice in my ear constantly that was telling me something different.
Mm.
Um, but then I also had to, because it's like a battle that you really have to fight for yourself and by
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
And I remember at some point, I don't even know what point in my pregnancy, because there were so many markers. Because I remember when I had the miscarriage was around 8, 9 weeks, and then when I had my son Nathaniel, he was born at preemie, he was born at 34 weeks, and then the son that I lost was born at 36 weeks. So there were so many like markers that were quote unquote danger signs,
Wow.
danger points for me that were would bring a lot of anxiety. So especially when I went through the first and then started approaching the 34-week mark, and that I could feel the anxiety building up again. But I remember also having moments where I said, this is a new thing, it's a new journey. um there's also no guarantee that it won't end well. And why can't I be on the side of hoping that it ends well? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay,
Good.
sorry. I think I don't know. I think the video froze on my side completely. So I'll keep speaking in faith. Just so you can still hear me,
Yeah.
hear and see me.
Yeah.
So I had to I had to really constantly pray
Mm.
during my pregnancy and just speak life to my baby. Constantly speaking life to my baby and constantly saying, God is doing a new thing. It's not like the past. This is a new thing. This is a new baby. This is a new journey. And allowing myself to be hopeful and refusing to be trapped by fear, because in scripture says God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. And for me, taking that place of I'm going to be courageous, regardless of what happened in the past, I'm going to be courageous, and I'm going to do whatever I need to do to ensure that my spirit remains courageous. And, all the way even towards the end, there were times when something happens, which was like a bit of a scare.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately my head would go to like the worst case scenario,
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'd have to remind my spirit that Kambua, this is a new thing. God is doing a new thing. And so when I eventually found myself in that delivery room, I've shared before how I had curated a playlist which I had named after my daughter. I put it on my Spotify and I listened to that music. For me, it was music that reminded my spirit to be courageous in God. And I listened to that music and I listened. And as I was getting to the delivery room, I asked the nurses, can I have my music playing? They were like, of course. So, my music was playing and they were like, oh, that's such beautiful music. But for me, I'm like, you don't know, I'm in a battle right now. I am fighting, I'm fighting a battle. And when I heard my baby crying, because of the three that I have given birth to, this is the first baby that I had ever heard crying, right? Which was such a big deal for me, but also such a great affirmation, because I felt that I realized that God indeed fulfills his promises. And I realized that a lot of the times, because what fear does to us is it creates patterns in our minds, that patterns that don't necessarily exist,
Yeah.
So we are the ones who start saying, oh, at 8 weeks, I'll probably lose my child. At this, I'll probably, because it happened the last time. Those are dots that the enemy wants you to join. And God is like, no, 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 erase all of that. Erase all of it. Allow me to do my thing. So, I get it. I really get it. And even, I'll tell you that even in raising my kids, I have the number one knowledge that my kids are mine, but they're not really mine. You know what I mean? I am stewards of those children, but ultimately they belong to God. Because I have experienced what it means to have a child, and I've experienced what it means for a child to be taken away from me, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. So when I have found myself, like I remember a time when my daughter was very unwell, when I found myself in those places where I suddenly get, that anxiety again, I remember that she's a gift that God gave to me, and he has the ability to watch over her and to protect her. And me allowing myself to get into a place of that crippling fear does not help the situation. So let me choose to be at the place of faith and a place of courage and the place of declaring life and speaking life over her and to myself as well. So I feel like this battle of the mind, it doesn't end. We have to keep consciously fighting it throughout our lives. I think that even if my kids are 20, I think there will be times when I'm like, but reminding myself that huyu mtoto ni wangu lakini si wangu. So I'm just gonna have to trust the giver of the gift with these children. Yeah.
I think the reality also that we will never be rid of the fear, we will never be rid of the anxiety, we will never switch it off and be okay.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, knowing that this is what I do about it. This is what, oops, there. Did I leave and you came back? You're here.
Okay.
This is what I do intentionally, to be able to, So I know you've said it scattered here and there, but what works for you? What keeps you going? And this is just outside of the waiting space. I mean, you are doing so much there. What keeps you going?
What keeps me going is, I think that outside of this waiting, having children, blah, 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 but all of it still being a big part of who I am, is I started to feel such an urgency about my life and about how I live my life, and pursuing purpose, and realizing that I'm on assignment, being very clear on that I'm on assignment here. So it's been, especially after turning 40, I was just like, I have an assignment over my life. What's that assignment? And what am I doing to fulfill that assignment? So that when my time is up, because I don't know if my time will be up tomorrow, even though I want to live and be an old show with a lot of gray hair and give you guys a lot of music and have a lot of grandbabies. That is what I want, and I imagine it so much, but I'm also aware that I am not the one who determines that time. So when he says that, okay, the time is up, will I have fulfilled the things that he sent me here to do? Will I have impacted and changed lives? Will people be the better for having known me and interacted with me? So I think for me, it's been so much of keeping eternity in mind has determined so much of what I do, how I do it, the doors that I walk through, the doors that I have said that one is not for me. Because you also realize that it's so easy to be so busy doing a lot of things that are not necessarily aligned with what you're supposed to be doing.
Mm.
So more and more as time goes by, I've sort of I'm narrowing more into the things, or leaning more into the things that I'm strongly convinced that I'm supposed to be doing. And some of those things are involve women,
Yeah.
speaking for women,
Yeah.
fighting for women,
Yeah.
and especially in the maternal health space.
Mm.
You know what our healthcare system is like, and mothers going in to have babies, it should be a natural process. And in Kiswahili they say mimba sio ugonjwa.
Mm.
It's true, but so many of our mothers go in and don't come out alive. So many of our babies go in to be delivered, don't come out alive.
Mm.
So what is it that needs to be done, as far as advocating for mothers and babies? So my voice, I feel, has become more and more amplified, and more urgent with the things that I'm doing, and more intentional as well. Yeah.
And I think there's nothing as beautiful as finding meaning and purpose in the journey of what we would call brokenness, or the journey of struggle.
Right.
They say the final stage, or one of the concluding stages of grieving, is getting a sense of meaning and purpose. And it's really beautiful to watch how that has shown up for you, and how you fight and advocate for women in that space. Thank you so much for sharing today, Kambua. In the midst of your busy schedule, you have stopped in your car to have this conversation. And just as we touched down, I just was wondering, is there any words of, I'm sure you have, what words of hope do you have? Words of healing that can be a message to women who are waiting, women who have gone this journey?
For women who are waiting, I want to repeat words that I said that were shared by another woman years back when I read her book, that motherhood is a great calling, but it's not the only calling. And I pray that even as you're waiting, even as you're hoping and all of that, that you realize you're so much more than the title of mother. That's number one. Number two, also being aware that God makes us mothers in so many different ways, and being open to his leading. I have people I love who God has blessed through adoption, God has blessed through IVF, God has blessed through all sorts of different paths that we never think of, because we just grew up knowing there's one way for me to become a mother. So also being open as we're waiting, being open to what God is leading us to, but also letting you know, as a woman who is waiting, that you're not alone. There are so many women who've walked in your shoes, and there's a whole community of women who get it, because waiting, issues of infertility, etc., they can feel very isolating. Loss can feel so isolating. You can feel like, when you're having that miscarriage, or that stillbirth, or that whatever, in that moment you actually feel like you're the only woman who has ever gone through this. It's so devastating. But then you realize, actually, if you just speak even to the women around you, when you open yourself up for that community and for that help that we're talking about, you realize there's so many women who get you, who see exactly where you are. And so get help. Don't walk through it alone. When I lost my son, I got help. I got grief therapy on top of my family and my friends. I got help, professional help, and it's okay to do that, because sometimes you need a professional to just help you navigate what that situation looks like. But above all, I want to remind you that the one who created you, who knows you so well, better than anybody else, has a great plan for your life. And scripture says, Jeremiah 29:11, he has a plan to prosper you and not to harm you. Because God's plans for you are good. His heart towards you is good. His intentions for you are good. And his track record is a record of one who never fails. So instead of running away from him, instead of throwing your faith away and run closer to the cross, cling onto him. Let him be that last card that I was talking about. Let him be that card that I will go down with this one. But the thing about God is he never lets us be put to shame. He always, scripture says that those who look to him are radiant. Their faces are never put to shame. He will never put you to shame. It might be difficult, it might be painful, but his grace is enough. He'll give you the grace to go through it. And then you'll get into another season of life and you look back and you're like, I don't even know how I got through that,
Right.
Because God is faithful. So be very, very encouraged.
Thank you for that. I think the biggest reminder here is that faith doesn't take away the pain, but it helps us to get through it as it takes.
Yeah, for
Thank you
sure.
for being such a great example of faith, of wisdom, and you do it with such grace. May you continue
Thank
to
you.
thrive in the work that you do, Kambua.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you as well, Dr. Carol. And I'm really honored that you invited me here today.
You're very welcome.